dance. And there's a picture of that I remember having of him with like his foot was preposterously higher than his head. And it was awesome. 3 years ago, I was on a music video shoot, and the phone rang, and it was him, and he'd been complaining about his back and how he had fallen, and his back wasn't right, and he was seeing a chiropractor, and then he got up one morning and hauled himself to the doctor, and of course it took about a second, I guess, for the doctor to diagnose him with cancer, and so that was the start. You'll remember the details maybe better than me of that particular time frame, but I remember that his prognosis was grim at the very beginning, and almost like go put your affairs in order. And I know that he had a lot of support and talked to a lot of people, but I remember a particular conversation that he told me about with Gene Rumsey, who knows something about cancer. And I remember Gene telling him, like, don't let anybody tell you that it's time to give up. You're going to find somebody that's going to treat you, and you're going to keep fighting. And he did. It was unbelievable to me. You know, and you could watch him, you'd see on his postings like, whoa, 1 month he wouldn't look so good, and then he'd look good. Yeah. And then he wouldn't look so good, but then he'd look good again. And I'd have friends go see him, or I'd see him, and he just kept fighting. And it seemed to me like after a while, like this might just go on forever like this. And that he might just, if he didn't beat it, he was gonna just keep fighting it forever. And about a year ago, Thanksgiving, I was in New York with my family at Balthazar down in Soho. And the last time we had been there was with Michael. So my daughter, Claire, who's crazy about him, says, I wish Michael Terry was here. So I said, well, let's take a picture and we'll send it to him. He was in LA, you know? So we took a selfie of us in Balthazar and sent it to him, and like 2 seconds later, I get a message. He says, I'm in Brooklyn. So he hadn't told me that he had moved to Brooklyn so he could get treated at Sloan Kettering. And so the next night we had this fantastic dinner with him at Carmine's. And once again, I felt like this is just gonna go on. He looked like he was tired, but he was still fighting. And I remember saying goodbye to him on the corner that night thinking, gosh, this might be it. I might not see him again, you know, but still, he kept fighting. And then last spring, he was not doing so good. And I have to mention Tony and Desi, you know. Who told me that you literally showed up at his doorstep and made him move in with you. It's like unbelievable. So anyway, he called me, and the Music Biz convention, I was going to call it NARM until I saw Jim Donio, and I have to call it Music Biz to be correct. But anyway, he told me that you guys were going to make a road trip out of it. We didn't discuss this, but I imagined it was partly because you didn't want to leave him by himself. And he sounded bad, though, and I thought, he might not make it to Nashville. But he made it. And he told me he was going to come, and he was going to stay with us, but he wasn't going to come to the conference. He didn't want people to see him like that. And then he spoke to you, Jim, and you convinced him to come and gave him a badge. And he wasn't even in the business anymore. You know, he'd had by that time, he had to give up his tenure at Universal. But he came, and he took pictures with like practically everybody at the conference. He came to a country show of ours and was taking picture with the artist, you know, and it was awesome. And when we said goodbye, I did have a premonition that might be it. But then he still fought on, and then over the summer he had a brain tumor, and then he just kept fighting. And it was remarkable to me. You know, he could have caved in. He probably could have been dead 2 3/4 years ago. But he was relentless. He loved life. And so I was rehearsing this last night with my family at the dinner table. My daughter's like bawling her eyes out, saying, "Why are you doing this to us?" And I said, because it didn't take Michael 3 years to die. It took him 3 years to show us how to live. And I love it.
Thank you, Cliff. I would like to ask Tony and Desi to stand up. Thank you for giving them a shout out. Everybody has a busy life. Everybody has so much going on. Michael was living in Brooklyn, 10 minutes away from me, 10 minutes away from his cousin, but everybody has life. So there were times where I couldn't get to him. There were times where Saul couldn't get to him, and Tony and Desi really stepped up to the plate. So we really, really appreciate it, and thank you so much. Dan Beck hired Michael to work at V2. So if you come up and say some words about your time working with him.
Well, I met Michael, I guess it was 20-some years ago. I was president of V2 Records, and we had another label called G Street. And we'd only recently signed a distribution deal with BMG and with Pete Jones. And we needed a salesperson who could kind of give a little credibility, go in and really educate people to what G Street was and this very kind of eclectic urban label. And for new labels in those big distribution systems, it was a sharp learning curve. You could really make some mistakes. You could go out there and hype your records and everything's number one, and then suddenly the distribution company says, I don't think we can believe these guys. So we needed somebody with great enthusiasm, but somebody who could really convey the truth and really sit down and talk to people about music in a great way. And so we, our salespeople, Bob Cahill and John Baker, who was the founder of G Street, and our GM, Richard Sanders, and I got together, and somewhere somebody came up with Michael's name. And I didn't know him at the time, and I think Bob did, and maybe Richard did, and we brought him in and got to meet him, and it's where Michael and I really connected, because he had done his homework a little bit, and so he came into my office and sat down, and the first thing he said to me, he said, "You worked with Michael Jackson, didn't you?" And so, our interview kind of fell apart right there, and I started telling Michael some Michael Jackson stories, and of course he absolutely loved them, and it became kind of a part of our relationship because I knew how much he loved Michael and how much he loved a great story about Michael, and that it was really important to understand who Michael Jackson was. And for the little bits and pieces I could give him, it was so much fun, and it became kind of our fun thing. But I used to get really concerned that, here's Michael, who's the greatest student of Michael Jackson on earth, and I'm not going to have a really good story for him. What am I going to tell him next time? So Michael would come in my office, and I latched onto something that totally worked. And Michael would come in and say, "Dan, you got to tell me another Michael Jackson story." And I'd say, "PYT." And he would go, yeah. Or I'd say, rock with you. And he, and that's all he needed to tell him. Because he was gone. He was there. It was like, that was it. That's all I needed to tell him. But we would share some stories, and I always remember Michael after, we'd have a little chat, and I'd tell him a little anecdote about Michael, and he'd just sit there and that beautiful smile of his, and he'd just shake his head. And he was just, it was just such a great thing. And but anyway, Michael did a wonderful job for us, and we had the Jungle Brothers and PM Dawn and the RZA and the Gravediggers, and he went into BMG and out to the branches and really connected for us in just a really, really great way. And I was so proud of him. And, I guess things went so well that one day, Rick Bleiweiss called me, and I knew it was a really hard call for Rick, and he said, Dan, we'd really like to take Michael and bring him to BMG and to head marketing for the distribution company. And I took a deep breath, and I thought, first, what we were losing. It's like, gee, we've got this great guy here, and, we're a struggling young company, and we're trying to get someplace, and you just want to have all that credit in your camp. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, Michael's going to be inside the system. He's never going to forget us. He's going to have our back. He's going to be in there every day, and and he knows where he's been, and he's going to just, we're going to have a secret weapon inside that system, and his name is Michael Terry. And so I kind of quickly got over my loss of Michael, and I thought, here we have him. We've got him in a bigger place, and he's really going to be there for us. And so anyway, so I lost my friend to a big company, and he went on to bigger and better things. And I guess that's what we've all experienced with Michael. He knew what path he was on. In the meantime, he taught us about life, and he showed us how to experience it. And he taught us that it doesn't last forever. And he also taught us that that's going to be all right. When Michael went to BMG, I thought we now had somebody inside who can help us with the powers that be. And maybe that's what Michael's doing now, talking about his love of his friends and how much he thought of us. And I'd like to think he's up there with all that enthusiasm, with all that cred, and with that beautiful smile, selling us. If we're going to be advanced, that's the man to have do it. And he's repping us, maybe in a much bigger game. I had a situation years ago when Michael was at V2. I had everybody come out to my house for a backyard barbecue, and we had about 80 people there. And so, Michael was one of the 80 cool V2 G Street people. We all had all these 20-something people. It was a young company. And so he's out there, and everybody's, getting a beer, a glass of wine, or a hot dog, or hamburger, or whatever. And so my son was about 11 years old at the time, and he's out in the driveway shooting hoops with the next-door neighbor kid. And Michael ambled over to where they were, and so he starts shooting some baskets with them, just casually, And then they started playing a little harder. And I said, so it's Michael with this 11 and 12-year-old boys, and they're shooting some hoops. And Michael's got the big grin on his face, and he's just, he's having fun. But so I go over to him and I said, my Michael, it's great, but, if you need a little relief from these boys, let me know, He said, no, it's fine, it's fine. So I went off and started talking to other people that were, in the backyard there, and I look over, and there's this game going on. It's like this intense game. Michael and these two boys, they're just playing like crazy. And I look at these two boys, and this is like the Final Four to them. This is like they've got this cool 20-something young guy, and all the rest of those people, I don't know who was there, RZA, Moby, they didn't care. Man, this was the guy they wanted to be with, And he's still smiling. I'm saying, Michael, these guys, give yourself a break. And he said, no, I'm loving this, so. And it's funny, as I look back, 20-some years later, and my son remembers one person from that day. And, whether RZA was there or Moby was there or any of our other artists were there, and all the other people, he met Michael one day for like an hour and a half, and he knows him today. And that's the kind of impression I think Michael always gave us. But in a world that is often cruel and unfair, we had Michael, who found the best in it, and he found the best in us. And he taught us all about love. Thank you, Michael Terry. Thank you for bringing us together. I see your beautiful smile on all the faces in this room. And thank you for making sure that we all met. This is a great thing, and he planned it. We're all so deeply thankful for having Michael in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up our next speaker, which is a dear friend of Michael's, and I'm going to adopt her as my auntie from today. Maria, if you could please come up.
Well, I have to say that it's a daunting task to speak about Michael. And I really, really struggled over the weeks to think about what I could say. And I really worried because it didn't come to me. It just wasn't coming. And well, then I started to just think about the essence of Michael and the way I knew him, because I kind of knew him in a quieter way. I wasn't part of the industry, even though we met through the industry. So I didn't meet him, at the shows and the events and the parties. We just kind of connected through a program that I worked on with him at BMG. And I remember when he met me, he really didn't think I was going to be the person for the program, because he had requested a diversity program, and I showed up and he said, how terrible I was. I don't know why you brought in this white woman from the suburbs. And he didn't tell me that at the time. He was kind of cool. But very quickly, we got to know each other in a really, really deep way. And the kind of work that we did in just a short time was really some of the most meaningful work, and that's a long time ago now, and I've always used it as a hallmark for what a great relationship and what a great conversation can be when you have the right people in the right mix, and you have people who really care. And some of you were there then, and we still talk about it, what we did up until really always. And anyway, so that's what I was thinking about, and then it came to me, and so I wrote a little bit of a story for Michael. So this story is about Michael, and it's for you, Michael. There is a secret chamber in each of our hearts. It is an inner sanctuary, and only we get to know. And it holds our story. Each of us is in touch with the retaining walls of our own chamber. When we push at these walls through our own reflections, and often these reflections come in the middle of the night in the form of dragons, we get a sense of what can and cannot be shared. How much of our story can we set free? Now, the thing is that these walls cannot be easily moved. We can't muscle our way up against them, and though certainly we all try. And so from time to time, we get to open a window and we let something in or out, and it feels wonderful. But we also know that it's not enough. We need more. So there's a big double door that opens into the middle of the inner core of the chamber. This door is beautiful, but it's forged in petrified wood. And petrified wood is like stone. It's very heavy. So you get the picture. This door is really hard to open. To make it even more difficult, the door is locked, tight, with two of the biggest padlocks you can imagine. Super-sized padlocks. One is called Hopes, and the other is called Hurts. And because there is a chain that runs from one padlock to the other, they are locked together. You can't open one without the other. How many people think that we are born with our story already written for us, that we are destined to a certain experience? But I want to share another view. Each of us comes into the world open and dependent. We don't come looking for our needs to be met. We expect them to be met. After all, how could we know any different? We have just experienced what can best be described as a quintessential free ride. So we greet the world as if we were the center of the universe. And then the day comes. Maybe we're 1 or 2 years old, maybe a little sooner or a little later if we're lucky. And we get the rude awakening. We are shown before we are told that our needs are not always paramount, and we are not the center of the universe. Maybe we are waiting with bright eyes for a loved one to pick us up, look us in the eyes, as if we're all that mattered, and coo at us. And instead they pass us by, rushing to answer a door or to turn the stove off. Or maybe our idea of milk and Cheerios all over the carpet doesn't spark the same gleeful energy in the person bending over to clean it up. And we catch a look on their face that makes us wonder where the person we love is gone, and who is the stranger now to me? So in any case, there's a moment when we experience our first real disappointment. And that moment, the openness of our expectation to be loved and the realization that it can be met by an indifferent or angry world is what forges our story. Now, in reality, these are everyday occurrences. But for each of us, that very first time is transformative. It is life-changing, because it is in that precise moment that we forge the secret chamber that lies deep within each of our hearts. It is here that we go about putting our most important hopes and our hurts each time we face a new disappointment, which of course is the norm of everyday living. And we think we are keeping them safe, tucked within this secret chamber, but in reality, we are keeping them hidden. So to live fully means to set them free. Yet very few of us have the key and the courage to open the door. No less invite others in. This is what Michael did. Each of us is here because we experienced the incredible intimacy that Michael conveyed by letting each of us into the secret chamber of his heart. He could be fearless in his desire to love and live free, and simultaneously share that he was shaking in his boots, worried about being lonely or in pain. I will miss the middle of the night phone calls and the way he told me stories about something that happened that day, and the sound of his voice when he was happy or when he was sad. The details he noticed about others, all of you, and the care he took in being fair. I had so much fun working with Michael at BMG when we traveled to all the branches and got to work with everyone. If I had had a magic wand, I would have worked with him every day, and I told him that. He was a natural, always pushing at the edges, looking to make things better and invite others in. He was just so smart about people and so right-minded. Mrs. Terry, you did a great job. You raised a great son. He loved travel. We've heard so many beautiful stories today, and everybody knows about his travel. And he loved people. He was the ambassador of love. Last Christmas, with his chemo pack strapped on him, he took a train to Philly to hop on a plane to get to Rome, to get to Naples in time for Christmas dinner. With his other Italian family. He had a number of other Italian families. And my family loved him like a brother. Nostro fratello Michele. He called us while they were still at the table, and he could not have been happier. He loved all the food, and he especially loved sfogliatelle. I love how excited he could get just by eating a sfogliatelle. He got excited about sfogliatelle the way he got excited about Michael Jackson, tennis, Barcelona, his family, his nieces. He loved you so much. However big or little his experience, he was fully present, and his joy was full on. Mark Twain, you're not supposed to wipe right with your hands, I'm sorry. Oh, they're right here. Okay. Mark Twain said that the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. Yeah. And Michael opened the inner chamber of his heart. And we're all here because he invited us into it. He shared his story. He told us to celebrate life. It's unbelievable, the experience. I've never had an experience like this in my entire life. And many of you, I'm sure, all of us, have not. That's the end of what I've written, but I want to say one more thing. The other day, I was looking at photos, and I don't post on Facebook and stuff, so I feel sometimes like I'm not sharing all the things I want to share with everyone, but I do it in my head anyway. And does that count? And I was looking at some photos that we took one time when Michael was up visiting us in the Berkshires, and we went up to this place called Dream Away. And we had dinner. It's an old hippie haunt. Like, you go up in the mountain and you can only get there, and it's only open a certain time, and the food is delicious but a little quirky, and there's stuff all over the place. And anyway, I saw the photos, and we had just had such a wonderful time. It was before coming out to the wedding, and just before. But the thing that I have to thank him for was that as I was looking through the photos, there were great photos of him being playful, but there were two photos of my daughter. And I know he said to her, "Pia, jump." And there's the photo, just like he's in front, jumping on the sand. There's my daughter, jumping up and feeling the same joy that Michael conveyed to each of us. And I can't thank him enough. We all love him for good reason.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'd like to introduce the next speaker. This particular lady, I met her for the first time today, although we've been connected on email for years via Michael. Now, she would like to think that she is Michael's tallest friend and is his favorite tall friend. But we have to share the role today. So Sharon Jones-Evans, please join us.
Yes, today was my first time meeting Miss Fiona, and I told her that he had called me on a Facebook page one time his chocolate princess, and he has the nerve to have another tall one. However, let it be known that I claimed the title first, your favorite tall girl, and I am all of y'all's favorite tall girl, just so you know. Okay, I'm the second of two children, 10 years apart. I was my father's last chance for a boy. Obviously, it didn't work out for him. But my mother said, look, if you don't hit the gender lottery this time, this is it. Baby making store is closed, that's all. But I've always enjoyed the title of the baby. Yes, I'm almost 60, but I'm still the baby. But I've often wondered what life would be like with a brother. And I adopted Michael as my brother. And we had many similarities. You know, his mom and my dad had the same kind of job, and we both went and helped our parents with their jobs. We each had one older sister. We had the same hairdos. Big afro, little afro, no hair, the braids. And we also fought cancer together, and he was my hero because he let me know that you can live on. So if I could have built my